प्रभु तव मूर्ति विनोदकारी पलपन विसरे नहीं जो विसारी जुगल चरण सोल चिन्ह जेह नजर समीपे रहो अमारी एह नजर समीपे रहो अमारी एह घनश्याम महाराज निजे, हरिकृष्ण महाराज निजे, स्वामीनारायण भगवान निजे, ठाकुर जी महाराज निजे, सदगुरुदेव की जय। लोयधाम परिवार वाला वाला राजाधिराज ठाकुर जी महाराज, our divine Sadguru Shri Muktanand Swami and our Sadguru Santo, our Vala pathmaker to our liberation, our Puja Guruji, and all of you Santos and Bhaktos, Jai Swaminarayan. As we embark in our journey for Yuva Sabha, we move into week 10, which is theme-based Dasatva. There's been 9 other themes in the past that have to do with Mahima, Swabhav, Prem, Bhakti, etc., so on and so forth. But this very topic or theme of Dasatva is the pinnacle of all these, you can say, topics or virtues. Dasatva is the pinnacle and Dasatva is the foundation. One needs Dasatva in one's life as a foundation, and one needs Dasatva even after reaching the pinnacle of all the virtues as Sadguns in one's life. Dasatva, or humility, we can say, is a tree trunk, and all the other branches and the fruits are different virtues such as Mahima, Prem, Bhakti, Samjan, etc., so on and so forth. That's why as Loyadham Parivar Bhaktos, our Sadguru Sant, Mahamuni, Sarvopari Sant, Muktanand Swami's life is an example of how we should develop Dasatva in our life. Our Puja Guruji is an example for us right now of how or what kind of Dasatva we should have in our life currently. It's one of the most important, or if not the most important virtue in total, in all. In the Vachanamrut, Bhagwan Swaminarayan mentions this virtue to be the best of the best. Bhagwan Swaminarayan nonetheless portrayed and displayed this virtue throughout his life. We remember the Jain boy, or we remember the boy who spat on the Jain sadhu accidentally, and the Jain sadhu became very furious and rioted in the village, and Bhagwan Swaminarayan himself came to the Jain sadhu, folded his hands and bowed down to him as a form of humility and apologized on behalf of the whole sampradaya. Bhagwan Swaminarayan, God himself, did this to a samanya, regular sadhu. Then think about what kind of Dasatva we should have as Loyadham Parivar Bhakto. Sadguru Muktanand Swami, as we've heard many times, the old lady threw a mop at the face of Muktanand Swami, and Muktanand Swami kept the mop, washed the mop, dried it, and took the mop threads and made wicks from it and put it in an arti and told the sadhus to pray for the betterment of that old lady, and did the arti of Bhagwan Swaminarayan with that intention. That Muktanand Swami is ours. Then think about it, what kind of Dasatva we should have. Our Puja Guruji, his life in all, may it be tolerating insults of even the smallest, or may it be bowing down to whoever is needed in order to keep that soul safe in satsang, our Puja Guruji is the pinnacle of Dasatwa, and we can see that in his life every moment. Then as Loyadham Parivar Bhakto, why not keep this virtue? As Loyadham Parivar Bhakto, why not imbibe this virtue in our life to reflect that, oh, this sadhu is Muktanand Swami sadhu. This sadhu belongs to Puja Guruji. This sadhu is of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Why not do that by our character? Why not do that by having this virtue as a foundation, nonetheless as a pinnacle in our life? We can do it if we try. It's just a matter of motivation, nonetheless understanding. And that's why these Yuva courses are developed, so that such kind of understanding is developed in the minds of Loyadham Parivar Bhakto, so that we can actually become stronger in satsang and move forward with very little ease and become very dear to Bhagwan Swaminarayan, our end goal. So without further ado, let's take a look at the outline for today of what we're going to be covering. Yuva Sabha outline. First and foremost, a Vachanamrut, Gadara 1st chapter 14th. Nonetheless, another Vachanamrut, Gadara 1st chapter 58. And finally, a Vachanamrut, Sarampur 17th. And then Puja Guruji says, and then two Charitras, one of Sadguru Sri Muktanand Swami and second of his disciple and our second Guru, our Adhanand Swami. So we want to cover such kinds of Vachanamruts and Charitra so that we can take a look and reflect in our life what is missing, what is remaining, and what is already there. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Vachanamrut Gadara 1st chapter 14. Swaminarayan Hare. Bhagwan Swaminarayan says, what are the characteristics of a true servant of God? It is asked. What are the characteristics of a true servant of God? First and foremost, there's two things that we can understand. True servant. Now there is a servant and there's a true servant. There can be many servants of God, but servants also have different kinds of swabhavas, natures. A servant can also be very egotistical. A servant can also be very, very lazy. A servant can also be very, very, you can say, very, very, has little understanding. But a true servant encompasses all virtues. And Bhagwan Swaminarayan is asking, what is the characteristic? Let's take a look. He realizes, the true servant, he realizes the physical body is asatya. Asatya meaning false. Now here's one thing, dear devotees. When Bhagwan Swaminarayan is speaking in such kind of a language, it has nothing to do with any kind of physical features or anything to do with any kind of physical activity. Realizing the physical body to be asatya is through understanding. Meaning, yes, we live in this body as souls, we eat, we sleep, we walk, we talk, we do everything. But keeping a constant understanding that this is not the body, this is not my body, I am the soul, I am ever luminous, forever. I cannot die, I cannot be pierced, no one can ignite me. Such kind of virtues that the Vachanamrut shows about the Atma, the soul. And the Shikshapatri also shows such kind of virtues. One thinks in one's head that this body is not real, it is false. Because suppose my age is right now 33. 35 years ago, this body was not there and I did not know where I was as the soul. And 100 years in the future, this body will not be here. Meaning, this is kind of like a temporary shirt. Let's put it that way, or a vest. If a tailor gives a person, makes a person a vest and gives it to him, that does not mean that the tailor is his father. That just means that the tailor has given a piece of cloth. Now that cloth, when it rips apart, is going to be taken off or is going to be thrown away. It's common. When clothes rip, no one, maybe once or twice, one may sew them back together, but then after some time, after a lot of wear and tear, they're going to be pretty much thrown away. In the same way, this body, yes, it's given by one's parents, but that doesn't mean that it is forever. After wear and tear, it's going to be completely destroyed through God or time, and it's going to be gone. One's not going to remember this body, one's not going to think of this body, one's not going to understand oneself to be the body anymore after the soul is released from this body. Then why not have and keep that understanding right now? That's why Bhagwan Swaminarayan is saying that the physical body realizes the physical body is asatya, meaning false, and his own atma is satya, meaning I am the atma, I am the soul, I am not the body, I am true, I am luminous, I am forever, I do not have a birth, I do not have a death. All these characteristics that the Shikshapatri and the Vachanamrut characterize the soul, one should think of, one should understand, one should believe, one should have faith in. That is the very purpose of understanding or realizing one's soul or atma to be satya. He harbors no desires to indulge in the objects that are intended for his master. For example, if we offer Bhagwan Swaminarayan, suppose we have a murti at home and we offer cologne or perfume to Bhagwan, we should not have a thought to also take that bottle and spray it on oneself. That is only intended for the master, which is Bhagwan. Suppose that we offer Bhagwan or we buy Bhagwan very, very expensive clothes. We should not have a desire to also wear those clothes. It is not intended for us. It is intended for Bhagwan. In the same way, any object, suppose even if we make thad, initially when we are making thad, we should not ever think that I'm going to eat this, I'm going to enjoy this. That is false. You are not making it for your master, you are making it for yourself. But if you think that I'm making this for Bhagwan and his Santo, then Bhagwan will accept your bhakti. Nonetheless, after if you partake as prasad, then it is not considered to be indulging in the master's objects, because you intentionally made it for Bhagwan and then Bhagwan accepted it, ate it, and gave it back to you as prasad. So that is not classified as you indulging. Because some will think that even food, if I offer it, then I cannot eat it. No, it is not like that. The process is what I just explained. But any objects kind of like used for Bhagwan, one should not use for oneself. That is the short meaning. Also, he never behaves contrary to the wishes of his master, meaning whatever the master wishes for, whatever Bhagwan, his Ekantik Satpurush, wish for, that's what he does without any kind of doubt. Even in the Vachanamrut Gadada 1st chapter 15th, Bhagwan Swaminarayan says that one who has bhakti in one's heart would do as per what the Sant says. That means that obeying commands is, you can say, the very, very base nature of a servant. See, the main question is, what is the characteristics of a true servant of God? Bhagwan Swaminarayan is a very, very practical and very, very smart Bhagwan. Obviously, he's God. How so? When we think of a servant, we think of just doing things, such as if the master says sit, you would sit. If the master says get up, you would get up. Just do whatever the master says. But no, not only that, Bhagwan Swaminarayan wants firm understanding even in dasatva. What kind of firm understanding? This body is false. The Atma is true. Not indulging in anything that we offer to Bhagwan. And number 4, obeying Bhagwan's commands. If we look at it from an outside perspective, we'd only think that obeying Bhagwan's command If I'm doing that, I am a das. But Bhagwan Swaminarayan mentions a true servant of God, meaning he very has put weight in such a word. And the true servant of God has all four of these characteristics. Therefore, as Loyadham Parivar Bhakto, one should first calculate, analyze in oneself what virtues one has out of these four and what are remaining, and slowly but surely start to add to one's life in order to become a complete true servant of God. This is the very base question in the Vachanamrut regarding Dasatva that we have taken here in week 10 Yuva course. Moving on. Gadada, first chapter 58. What is the only means of becoming a staunch devotee? What is the only means of becoming such a staunch devotee of God? What is the only means? Meaning staunch, meaning firm devotee of God. What is the only means? Now, before we get into it, let's remove our calculations regarding what a firm devotee is. Because sometimes when we think that we're able to preach, we're able to do things in satsang, we're able to help others excel in satsang, that we are a firm devotee of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. But let's not take our own measuring tape. Let's take the measuring tape of Bhagwan Swaminarayan and then put it into play into our life and see if it compares even the slightest. So Bhagwan Swaminarayan is asking, the only means of becoming a staunch devotee is by behaving as the servant of the servants of God, and by realizing all these devotees are great and I am inferior compared to all of them. Behaving as the servant of the servants of God, das na das. You know, we have that kari, dasana das thaine vadi je rahe satsangama bhakti tene balimanish rachis tena rangama. The one who remains dasna das in satsang, I will stay with him and his bhakti is true to me. Hari ke das das tin ke das hoy kar chad kapat karna nash vartanash da hoy kar. Haricharitramrut Sagar, our Gurudev Adharan Swami. Even the great Nandasanta wrote such kind of karis of dasatva to display that this is the very important element in a devotee of Bhagwan Swaminarayan's life. And without this element, it is not possible to excel. It's just very difficult. So, becoming such a staunch devotee, one has to become the servant of God, and also realize all these devotees are great and I am inferior compared to them. Very important statement in the Vachanamrut that Bhagwan Swaminarayan has mentioned, that all these devotees are great. Now, when we enter into satsang, we're very new and we do not know exactly. So at that very point in time, we believe ourselves to be definitely the lowest of the low because we don't know anything. If we take a look at an example in the world, if we enter our first grade classroom on the first day, we will not know anyone, we will not know any kind of subjects, we will not know anything. We will not know any kind of anything the teacher will teach. So we will become very submissive, very humble, and learn. But as years go on in satsang, we tend to develop such kind of an attitude that I know everything, or such kind of an attitude that I am something. And that's where Bhagwan Swaminarayan hits the brakes with this very statement. That, hey, listen, if you want to be considered a firm devotee in my eyes, you will have to consider everyone else to be great and yourself to be inferior. Inferior meaning the lowest of low. Even if one knows, even if one is sitting at a high position, if one has a high status in in satsang, if one knows and if one is even educated, very much so, it is very, very much needed that one still behaves in such a way that one understands oneself to be the lowest of the low, and one understands everyone to be the greatest of the greatest. So that is why Bhagwan Swaminarayan has mentioned this very statement, which is going to pierce many, many bubbles in one's life if one ever develops such kind of thoughts of being something great, or if one develops such kind of ahankar, believing oneself to be very, very great, then this vichar will nullify all other vichars. And that's why Bhagwan Swaminarayan has stated this to us out of compassion. Realizing this, he behaves as a servant of the devotees of God. All of the evil nature. So he realizes that he is very, very low and everyone else is very, very high. Not physically only, but also on a mental perspective. Sometimes it becomes a type of hypocrisy. One shows one is very humble, bows down very much so, does danvat and does a lot of seva, but in one's mind one is constantly thinking, I'm better than that person. That person doesn't know how to do this, I know how to do this. You know, people should recognize me, people should see me. All these kinds of vicharas, thoughts, are the vichars of one who is egotistical, are the vichars of not a firm but a very weak devotee. That's why for Loyadham Parivar Bhaktos, this very vichar is the vichar of Bhagwan Swaminarayan and is the very behavior of Sadguru Shri Muktanand Swami, all the way our whole Guru Parampara and our Puja Guruji, as we can see right now. Living in a small shed at the age of 64, washing his own clothes, drying his own clothes, doing mopping, sweeping his room and other rooms as a das, sleeping on a very, very simple, you can say thin bed sheet, nonetheless living a very simple life, doing bhajan and eating little. Where can we find a greater das than this? Guruji has very much in his life had much, you can say, man or pride given to him, has many hars or garlands put around him, has had many people praise him, yet just in a flash of a second, he goes to his life which is not even known to the world. He goes to this life which is impossible for anyone to do, because in his main nature, in his foundational nature, this vichar lies there of dasatva, that I am the lowest, everyone else is the greatest. That is the only way he will be able to do so. Even when he was accepting those garlands, even when he was accepting those praises, in his mind he was also always thinking in this fashion. Due to that, when he had to put everything away and go to and live this such kind of life, it was very easy for him, just like a flick of a switch. That's why, if our Puja Guruji is like this, then how should we be like as Loyadham Parivar Bhaktos? We do not have to do all of this, but our Puja Guruji shows us that even in satsang, become das. One does not have to do all this to become a das, but at least bow down to other devotees with one's heart. Do not take anyone's abhav or avgun. Always be humble. Always be very grateful as devotees of Loyadham Parivar that we have received our Thakurji Maharaj, we have received our Muktanand Swami, our Guru Parampara. Be prideful with them. Be prideful that what we have received, and become grateful and become humble. That is the only way to excel more and more in satsang. So Bhagwan Swaminarayan continues and says that all of the evil natures of a person who behaves in this manner are destroyed. All of them are destroyed. And day by day, noble virtues such as Gnana, Vairagya, Bhakti continue to flourish within him. So the one who behaves in this way, slowly, day by day, meaning he is accelerating. In the Vachanamrut Karyani 3rd chapter, Bhagwan Swaminarayan says that Sukhmuni is such a great sant because ever since he has entered this satsang till this day, his enthusiasm, his zeal is ever growing. So therefore he is like Muktanand Swami. In the same way, due to that factor that Shukanand Swami had the mode of dasatva, Bhagwan Swaminarayan's eyes, in Bhagwan Swaminarayan's eyes, he became very, very great and Mahan. In the same way, due to this dasatva feature, day by day, noble virtues such as Gnana, Vairagya, Bhakti will continue to flourish within that bhakta due to one element, dasna das, servitude, folding one's hands, becoming humble in front of everyone, even if that person is wrong, still becoming humble. Even if you know that this is wrong, still becoming humble. That's the way to win the heart of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, his santos, his devotees, and everyone. Therefore, as Loyadham Parivar Bhaktos, we are very, very fortunate to have such kind of a Guru Parampara that displays dasatva in every moment of their life. We are very, very fortunate to have such a Guruji that is always praying day and night for such kind of dasatva to develop in each and every devotee of Loyadham Parivar Bhakta. So why not? Why not let go of ego, and why not become more and more, you can say, humble in one's life? Therefore, this Vachanamrut is a base Vachanamrut, Katha 1st chapter 58, and Bhagwan Swaminarayan's words are very, very important because through his measurement we should live, not our measurement. Through his view, we should also develop a view, not by the world's view. Through his impression, we should be impressed, not by the world's impression. Therefore, this is the only way, and this way is the best way to attain Maharaja's Rajipo and to attain the Rajipo of our Sadguru Santo. So this is Katha 1st chapter 58. Now we would like to move on to Sarangpur 17th Vachanamrut. As obstacles, I would like to read, this is a very short form right here, but I would like to read in depth. Then holding a branch of the tamarind tree, he stood facing east and said, meaning Bhagwan Swaminarayan, from here, the full moon appears like a small plate, but as one approaches it, it appears to get increasingly larger. Then when one becomes extremely close to it, it becomes so vast that one is unable to see its limits. Similarly, as obstacles in the form of Maya are overcome, and one increasingly attains the proximity of God, one realizes the unlimited greatness of God, and one's sense of servitude towards Him is increasingly strengthened. Bhagwan Swaminarayan's examples are so practical and so perfect that it's Bhagwan Swaminarayan explained the hardest of the hardest Vachanamruts to even darbars, herdsmen, and he also explained the Vachanamrut to scholars. Such kind of Bhagwan has never came on this earth, and the only one, Sarvopari, is our Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Bhagwan Swaminarayan takes the example of a moon and says that from here, the moon seems like a plate, a small plate, but as one gets closer, one cannot fathom how great the plate is. In the same way, when one becomes closer and closer to God, it is very difficult to understand His greatness. Nonetheless, one realizes the unlimited greatness of God, and one's sense of servitude towards Him increasingly strengthened. It's hard, nonetheless, one also understands the greatness, and due to that, one's servitude becomes strengthened and uplifted. Now think about it. If you only have lived in a small village and not ever went outside of the world, ever traveled anywhere, and lived in a remote village, was born in that remote village and lived one's life in that remote village. And then suppose the President of the United States comes to the small village to just meet the village, greet the people, and you meet this president, you're just going to be like, who are you? That's it, and not have any kind of ahobow, greatness that, oh, this is the president of a superpower, the greatest superpower in the world currently, the United States. No mahima, no greatness. But if you were taken out from that small village and was taken to the United States, shown the glory of the army of the United States, shown how vast the United States is, how much power the United States has, how much economy revenue the United States has, shown what the United States has done in history, and then again you had a chance to meet the president, then you would feel, wow, the president of the United States, this man is very great, this man is very great. Because as you got closer to him, as you realized more and more about him, you became humble, you became grateful, you understood his glory. In the same way, Bhagwan is saying, the more and more you get closer in proximity to Bhagwan and realize his greatness, the more and more servitude develops in oneself and says, I am nothing, I am nothing. Look at God, He is a creator, destroyer, sustainer of everything. He lies in each and every atom, and even in each and every subatomic particle. Then think about it. Who am I? And then that dasatwa that develops from that kind of, but that dasatwa that realizing that greatness is very, very firm and solid and permanent. That dasatwa can never be removed. That servitude is like a solid rock. It can never be broken. But if one realizes Bhagwan's greatness, then one can become a das. That is the foundation of this Vachanamrut that Bhagwan Swaminarayan is talking about. And that is very, very important to do, because without realizing who we have attained, there is no way that one can develop dasatva ever. There is no way that one can become closer to Bhagwan ever. There is no way that one could attain Bhagwan's Rajipo ever. Therefore, the very means to realizing Bhagwan's greatness is the association of an ekantik Satpurush. This is the Vachanamrut. These are not my own words. When one develops an association with the ekantik Satpurush, one will automatically develop the knowledge of God's greatness. And when one develops the knowledge of God's greatness, one will automatically become a das. Das not only of God, but the das of everyone. Das of satsang, das of sadhus, das of haribhaktas, everyone. Because he knows that all these belong to my master. That's why. Through that connection, his dasatva is very, very firm. He will never develop an abhav or an avgun of anyone. That is how strong his dasatva becomes. And we are very fortunate to have such kind of Guru Parampara and such kind of a Sadguru, Pragat Sadguru, our Puja Guruji, that portrays such a dasatva, that shows that how much greatness has Guruji realized in his life of Bhagwan, that he is displaying such dasatva at the age of 64. We cannot fathom in our minds. Therefore, we are very, very fortunate, and that's why we should look at the lives of such kind of Sadgurus in order to develop dasatva in our life. And finally, our last slide, Pujya Guruji says, the one who becomes the slave of slaves, meaning dasna das, and surrenders to the Satpurush, becomes the recipient of the grace of the Satpurush. Meaning, the one who becomes the slave of the slaves, dasna das. Dasna das, understand it to be the servant of even servants, and surrenders to the Satpurush. One has to become dasna das and then surrender to the Satpurush. If one surrenders to the Satpurush with one's swabhavs, then the formula will not click. But if one becomes das, let's go. What does that mean? Become das? Not doing anything according to one's mind's wishes. Only doing according to the Satpurush's wishes. That is a dasna das. And surrenders to the Satpurush, becomes the recipient of the grace of the Sat. Meaning, એ જીવ સત્પુરુષના કૃપા પાત્ર થાય છે. That soul becomes eligible for the grace and the rajipo of the Satpurush. It is not possible without that. When one becomes the dasna das and behaves according to the wish of the Ekantik Satpurush, surrenders oneself to the Ekantik Satpurush, then that Satpurush bestows grace upon that soul. And when that happens, according to Gadara middle chapter 7th, then all of one's sins are burned away and one becomes very, very dear to Bhagwan. That's why it is very important to become the dasna das of the Ekantik Satpurush. And without that, it's not possible. Without the understanding, without the abhyas of the Vachanamrut, the scriptures, without the association of an Ekantik Satpurush and Sant Samagam, without Seva, Mahima, Bhakti, all these features, it is not possible. Everything is needed. For example, if you want to make a cake, you cannot just make it only with flour. You need flour, all-purpose flour. You need baking powder. You need chocolate. You need sugar. You need butter. You need an oven. You need a pan. You need milk. All these ingredients, when put together perfectly according to their measurements, and then when the temperature of the oven is set perfectly, and when it's taken out on time, then only will it considered to be a cake, or else it will be considered to be a burnt something else. Therefore, just like how a cake is made with certain kinds of ingredients, certain variables, certain amounts of variables, in the same way, a das is made through certain variables, as I mentioned before. When everything is put together, and when one's focus becomes solid, then one can become a das of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, the Ekantik Satpurush. And that's what we're here to do. So, moving to the next charitra of Sadguru Shri Muktanand Swami, Dasatva Murti, the idol of Dasatva, the idol of humility. He showed in his life such kind of humility that no other Sadguru showed. And there's two charitras in this course, and this first one is of Muktanand Swami, and how, in short, Bhagwan Swaminarayan, not a test but a bhav, an emotion to praise Muktanand Swami, was given in the village through Haribhaktos. Yet Muktanand Swami did not offer or did not accept any kind of praise. His intense dasatva bhava, even if Shri himself gave Swami the chance to be equally worshipped with him, he became a dasna das and took the soil of saints and Haribhaktos' feet and placed it on his head. And that's why Muktanand Swami is considered to be the satsang, the mother of satsang, the mother of Loyadham Parivar, the Adi Gurudev of Loyadham Parivar, because even if he had the chance, the charitra is a little long, but you'll be able to read it in our week courses, but even such kind of praise was given, he did not accept. He let it go. He gave it to bhagwan. And if we think about how hard that is to do, if we get just one praise, if someone says something good about us, even just one time, our 2 days become like we're the king of the world. Then think about how much praise Muktananda Swami was given through these devotees, worshipped just like bhagwan, yet he still took the soil of bhagwan and the sadhus and devotees and put it on his head. Then think about how great Muktananda Swami is to us. Think about how great Muktananda Swami is in the eyes of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, and how he has won the Rajipo in the heart of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. That's why we belong to this parampara, and we should always keep such kind of dasatva. And number 2, the second charitra, Sadguru Shri Adharanand Swami, the writer, the author of Haricharitramrut Sagar, the largest granth in the language of Hindi, still till this day today. He wrote this, but inside Haricharitramrut Sagar, Pur 6, Talang 63, Swami quotes, he wants to write many charitras of Maharaj, but ultimately it is up to Maharaj's wish, meaning Adharanand Swami, and in his hand to make the writing charitras possible, and only Maharaj can decide that. Muktananda Swami is saying this, but Adharanand Swami is believing that everything is the wish of Maharaj. Even if we're writing all this, still believing that this is all Maharaj's wish, this is not my wish, and everything is done by Maharaj, not by anyone, not by myself. Such kind of vichara is the vichara of a das. Writing the greatest, the largest volume granth in the language of Hindi in the world, and still keeping this kind of dasatva, shows that our Sadguru Parampara is not an ordinary Sadguru Parampara, but is the highest of the highest, because the one who is the Dasna Das is actually in reality the highest of the highest. And the one who believes oneself to be the highest of the highest, in reality, in Bhagwan Swaminarayan's eyes, is the lowest of the lowest. So we have received such kind of a Guru Parampara, we have received such kind of a Satpurush that has displayed and is displaying such kind of dasatva in one's heart. So then why not, as Loyadham Parivar Bhakto, why not develop more and more dasatva in one's life to attain greatness in the eyes of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, to attain the Rajipo of our Pragat Sadguru, our Puja Guruji, and to attain the Rajipo of Santo and Bhakto of Loyadham Parivar. Therefore, such kind of Vachramruts are very, very important and very, very needed in order to stay grounded, in order to stay humble, in order to stay down to earth, in order to stay easygoing. And such kind of hints Bhagwan Swaminarayan gives so that we can develop his Rajipo, and therefore we can attain Akshardham, our ultimate goal. Without forgetting our ultimate goal, even after learning everything, our ultimate goal is Rajipo of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, our Sadguru Santo, Puja Guruji, Santo and Bhakto, in attaining Akshardham. Nothing else should be in our goal. We do not want to do this, we do not want to do that. We only want to attain Rajipo. And through that, we can attain Akshardham and be in, you can say, an ocean of bliss forever on and on. This is the ultimate vision, this is the ultimate goal, and it all starts with this virtue of dasatva. Saying this, my humble Jai Swaminarayan.